Welcome in to a very special edition of the Gurus here. We're doing our first ever show review. It's All Her Fault on Peacock. Came out very recently. We were attracted to the show because of Sarah Snook. Me and Mike are big Succession fans, and
Yes.
Sarah won a ton of awards for her performance in Succession. So we're like, you know what? We gotta check this out. Mike Testa, Xavier Aguiar here to review this show. And Mike, you alerted me to this as I was watching the show, which I thought was funny. Like,
Hilarious.
you got to check that out. I was in the middle of watching, I believe, episode 2. So we both had the same initial feelings about the show. We'll get into everything we thought, but there was a lot of ads for the show leading up to the show itself.
Yes.
Were you hyped for this to come out? Because I turned on Peacock for something totally different. I saw the show came out, and I was like, you know what? I really want to watch this. This really gravitated to me. It caught my attention. And not just Sarah Snook, our guy Jake Lacey, who
Yes.
was unreal in White Lotus. So two
Yes.
people we are very familiar with in one show. What did you think from all the marketing and all that stuff?
So I had seen the trailer on Peacock. It said coming soon. And I watched the trailer and I immediately said, I'm going to put it in my list because I'm going to probably end up watching that. First of all, we love Sarah Snook. She was fabulous as Shiv Roy in Succession. I saw Jake Lacey in the preview. I saw Dakota Fanning in the preview. I saw Michael Pena in the preview. These are all actors I like, and I've seen another thing. So I said, okay, if I like the actors, then all you have to do is sell me on, is the storyline halfway decent? Because if it is, I'll watch it. And I'll watch it. If I like actors that are in other things, I'm going to watch the show probably, even if it's not good. Then I saw the trailer, and I was like, okay, this is interesting. I need to make a mental note of this, that I have to watch this at some point. And I just didn't have time because obviously basketball season, football season is going on. We have Survivor on Wednesday. So I was like, let me put it off for a day that I can actually start it and put my mind to it. And I finished it in less than 24 hours. So it was that good. So again, the trailer, I was like, the trailer's good and it doesn't tell me too much to the point. Obviously, we know what the plot is of a kid going missing here, but I was like, this seems like it's much more than this. I felt like they was going to peel back the onion a little bit. It's like, okay, there's much more than just, okay, the hook that grabs you in is, okay, there's a kid that went missing at school. But it was much more than that, obviously, as we know.
Yeah, and we don't really have a format for this, guys. We're just going to talk. Eventually, these show reviews might be a little more buttoned up. There might be some gimmicks involved. We might have some different categories. For right now, we're just going to talk about the show. We're going to go fairly in chronological order.
Yep.
But we're not going to go episode by episode. We're going to try to stick to what the show laid out in front of us and just talk about what we liked, what we didn't like, and we'll just dive right into it like we do on our Survivor pods, which if you didn't see it already, that came out yesterday. But for now, let's just dive into All Her Fault. Again, this is on Peacock and streaming now. So the first scene is the best scene in the entire show. We just get right into it. It's Sarah Snook. She arrives in a house. In this show, her name is Marissa Irvine. And she arrives to a house waiting to pick up her son. And this old woman, Esther, opens the door and she's like, hey, I don't really know why you're here. And that's pretty much every trailer that we saw of this show. That exact scene was in everything. So we knew that off the bat. And we figured the son was obviously missing. Sure enough, he's supposed to be at a play date. Milo, he's not there. So Marissa starts freaking out. She's like, what is going on? Where is my son? Come to find out, this was funny immediately. They basically paint Marissa and Peter, the Irvines, the two main characters in the entire show, as they're rich. They're not neglectful parents, but they kind of live in their own bubble. And that's kind of how this community is. But particularly, Marissa and Peter are really kind of off in a different universe than everyone else. Everyone's rich. Everyone's kind of pretentious, but those two in particular, there's just something about them. They're kind of just off in space. They're not really thinking about everything. So immediately, Marissa's like, I didn't cross-check that the numbers matched the parent list that was sent out,
phone number.
which I thought was kind of funny because, that's something that would immediately come up as a plot hole. They address it immediately.
Yeah.
I do like that. But Mike, as soon as the scene starts to kind of hit the next gear, I'm like, okay, Esther's involved somehow. We've watched enough television. This isn't random. You don't just go to a random woman's house. That text was sent for a reason. So I just liked how the show opened because immediately Marissa is under suspicion. Peter is under suspicion. Esther is under suspicion. And the show's been on for 2 minutes. So immediately we have 3 potential candidates. And then you can rope in Jenny, who is the mom of the
Yeah.
son Milo's was supposed to go over. You have both nannies immediately under suspicion, both Marissa's nanny and Jenny's nanny. Then you can rope in Jenny's husband. This is all unraveling so quickly.
It's the first 7 minutes.
Yeah, what did you think about that part? Because oftentimes in shows like this, my girlfriend kind of gets upset with me. I can usually sniff out who the culprit is or who the is supposed to be the big reveal within give or take 30 minutes. I usually have it under control. This I was kind of all over the place with because you have the obvious options. You have the parents, but you also have kind of the layered options. And there was so much thrown at us immediately. You kind of did get lost in who it could possibly be.
So for people that don't know, the trailer that we've seen is the very first scene of the show. So they jump right into kind of I thought they'd maybe wait an episode or have there's this, pretense.
100%. That's just usually how it goes. Usually that's at absolute the soonest. It's like halfway through episode 1. Usually you have some sort of either context, you have a lead up. There's something there. You have a scene maybe of her dropping Milo off at school and then going throughout her day. Something like that.
I did not think that they would be right at the door of Esther, this woman who apparently, obviously, so again, Sarah Snook's character, Marissa Irvine, is going to the house, assuming it's Jenny's house, because this is where the play date's supposed to be happening at. So Jenny obviously is, as you mentioned, the mom of Jacob, who Milo is supposed to have a play date with. She's never been to Jenny's house before, so she doesn't really know if this is the right house, but this is the address that Jenny allegedly texted her to pick up her son at. Obviously, as we know, she comes to the address. There's no Jenny. There's no Milo. There's no Jacob. It's Esther's house. Who in the world is Esther? We have no idea. We'll find out later. But Sarah Snook's immediately is kind of panicking. It's like, well, who sent me this text then? Because they obviously have to call Jenny up. Jenny says, I didn't send you that text. I don't know who sent you that text, but that's not my number. So we're all over the place in the first 7 minutes. So I'm immediately saying, and I was way off on this, but my first guess was, did Sarah Snook kind of just make all of this up and kind of go crazy and have this some sort of like mental disorder thing? That's what I was immediately going to. I was like, is the main character kind of like not a reliable narrator? That's immediately what I thought, because I've watched a lot of unreliable narrators, TV shows. So
it's a popular trope the last few decades for sure.
Correct. So obviously, but now she's panicking, obviously. So she's like, wait, did I do something wrong here? I have a tracker in his backpack. Where could he possibly be? I'm going to call my husband up, who is Jake Lacey in this show. He's at his work. Now, I do like that you pointed out that it feels like these two parents especially are very, very, very caught up in work. That first episode, if you were to go back and watch it, it was a lot of phone calls where they're both like, okay, that's just work. It's not important. If my kid was missing, I would be picking up every single phone call possible to see if it's possibly
you would
my
think.
kid. But it was a lot of work phone calls for both of them. So that kind of told us that they're both very, very caught up in their work and whatnot. Obviously, she works in accounts or in finance with this guy, Colin, I believe is his name, who she's like very close friends with. They work together. So again, there's all these plot holes. Obviously, the siblings come into it, but everyone's like, okay, who has Milo? Because if it's none of the siblings, in this case, Jake Lacey has a brother and a sister that stay, or his brother stays with him. So no one knows where Milo is, essentially, is what the first 20 to 25 minutes of the series is, the little mini series. So no one knows where he is. So immediately, of course, you mentioned the nannies are being asked, well, what happened here? Obviously, one of the nannies, Marissa Irvine and Peter Irvine, she's not even working right now. So she's out of town. Mysteriously goes out of town right when the kid goes missing. So there's obviously, she's a culprit. Why would she just not be there? Her phone's at the house. So it's like, what's going on here? The first episode it's almost like a whodunit, because somebody has to have the kid, and it's probably someone from the inside, because how could this possibly be done so, fluently and without any kind of, sniffing going around here? So it was very, very strange. I was still working up about, why did she get sent to Esther's house of all people? What does she have to do with it? She has to have something to do with it. She wouldn't just get sent to a random address, would she? All those plot holes ended up being obviously revealed later on.
For the most part, there's some stuff we'll get into a little bit later that I didn't like a ton. You mentioned you thought it could be Marissa Irvine is the unreliable narrator.
Correct.
My first thought, and we'll talk about this throughout, was Leah, actually. I thought Leah had something to do with it, perhaps. But then, as soon as I saw what Jenny's occupation was, I was locked in on her the entire time.
Okay.
I was locked in on Jenny. Here's why. Because I thought it was a conscious decision to make her an editor. at like this publishing house.
Yeah.
She's trying to do marketing, editing, just trying to rope people into her business to attract authors, right? I thought that was calculated. And the reason I thought it was calculated is perhaps because one of two things. One would have really annoyed me, and one I thought was more plausible in where they were going. The one was this was all a story. This was all a story. None of this was really that real. This whole encapsulation, because later in the show, she's talking to this author she's trying to attract to bring to the publishing house. And she makes a comment about this is your best work. I thought the best work was the show. I thought that's where we could have been going.
Yeah.
And again, this is me overanalyzing the crap out of it because we watched a ton of these shows and sometimes that just happens. So that was one thing I thought. The other thing, which I thought was more plausible, was she's kind of insane and is trying to do all this to like write a book of her own. This is all to further her career. Like, yes, she is marketing, but she wants a piece for herself to put herself on the map. She's been working on this in the shadows. She's staying at work, yes, to get all these clients, but also in a way to get her name up. She's also not just marketing, she's writing as well. And, she's trying to add to her portfolio. I thought those were both plausible because I didn't think her being associated with books and publishing, I didn't think that was a mistake. I thought that was intentional.
Sure.
It turns out maybe it doesn't really matter at all. It didn't seem like it mattered. It was just kind of a thing. That's something we'll get to later because I thought at some point I was like, what are we watching with this anymore? I thought it just became irrelevant, but that's where my mind went immediately. I thought at first there was just some vibes with Leah that were a little off as soon as she was introduced, but quickly and throughout until honestly the last few episodes, I thought it was going to lead back to Jenny somehow. And I thought Jenny kind of comforting Marissa Irvine throughout, early in the show particular, right after this tragedy happens, she makes it a point to really be kind of in her life, be right there with her throughout the investigation, kind of being her support. I thought that was a little suspicious because Marissa is telling Jenny these things that she's not necessarily telling anyone else. And because of that, I thought Jenny was using that as leverage in this investigation. She knew the inner workings of everything. She's the one most connected. I didn't think she was the obvious choice either. I think usually the obvious choice, I watch a lot of Dateline and like true crime. It's always the parents. That's what they say.
Yeah.
So I thought perhaps Jenny was like a layer below. So that's where I was coming into this with. And then you get throughout the rest of the episode, and we both alluded to it. The first episode, it's like, here's 8 or 9 people that could be involved. And maybe this is all an inner working thing. We really didn't know. But I thought that first episode really knocked it out of the park, drawing intrigue for what the show could be.
Well, let's jump right into when they finally get a hold of Milo's teacher. And he says, yeah, he got picked up by a girl named Carrie Finch. So we immediately are introduced now to Carrie Finch. Well, who the heck is Carrie Finch? Well, she's linked right to this. She's the nanny of Jenny, who, of course, as we mentioned, is you were high on the scent of it could be Jenny as the one behind
Did you think Carrie Finch mattered that much?
I thought immediately when I heard Carrie Finch has the kid, and I thought that she was the nanny of Jenny, and I was like, okay, something's a little bit off here. Why is she this close to this family member?
Yeah.
And their kids? I figured something might have been off there. So I was immediately kind of taken, okay, this has to matter a little bit.
I thought she was a connection to the actual person. That's what I assumed. The fact that it was just her, not to spoil everything, but right. the fact that it was her as the focal point, I thought was really weird because, again, it's a name we got introduced to immediately. And so the fact that it didn't really veer off the path of that was a little confusing to me.
Yeah, but as we get closer on, I was like, okay, because we do have some flashbacks occasionally. We have the flashback to the nannies meeting each other, which in this case, Anna, who is Sarah Snook's nanny, meets Carrie Finch, who is Dakota Fanning's nanny. They exchange pleasantries. Obviously, we have a bunch of lying going on in this cast, which always we do. We always have some kind of red herrings of like, why are they lying about this irrelevant thing that really didn't have anything to do with it? But the nanny initially lies to the police and says that she does not know who this other nanny is. She saw her one time in a line. They didn't actually. We come to find out that they actually had a pretty good relationship. They were always together with the kids. So that we come to find out. But there's other things that happen in the show where people are lying about like inconsequential things that you really didn't have to lie about and didn't have anything to do with Milo. But
well, Mike, I don't think it was a mistake that she was Hispanic and in the show was portrayed as having broken English. I thought they did a good job of kind of illustrating why she might be lying and be scared of the police. I thought that was like very intentional.
I totally agree. Yeah. But to stay on Carrie Finch, once we realized that Carrie Finch does have Milo, which we do end up finding out, she's like, okay, she has your son. We were able to kind of address that was a real thing. And then obviously we see her with Milo, I believe in episode 2 or 3. I don't know exactly which one it was, but we see her with Milo and she's almost like pretending to be somebody else, if you will. She's putting on a black wig. Yeah. She's having colored contacts in. So we can see that maybe this girl's not, maybe not the good person in the story here. I mean, just off bat, we kind of say, okay, why does she have this kid? Immediately, I went into, I think that her and Sarah Snook are related. I'm still on the Sarah Snook thing. So I'm thinking maybe Sarah Snook is at fault here a little bit. And I think that why else would she have this kid unless she was somehow trying to do something to get back at Sarah Snook, something like that? Because why would she take her kid? I couldn't wrap my mind around it.
Right.
So I was thinking
Peter, because I also had a similar thought because when you're watching a whodunit, the first thing you have to think of is motive. Why would someone do this? And at no point did I think they just wanted a child. It felt very targeted at Peter or Marissa. So why? Why would they target Peter and Marissa? And obviously, you have the sibling element. You have the business deal element. We haven't really talked about Colin yet. Colin is also, I guess, technically a suspect. Yep. He and Marissa are business partners, and Colin has a checkered past with sports gambling. Marissa is shown as kind of this big sister, if you will, kind of taking him under her wing. They clearly have a strong relationship. It's clearly a little bit rocky as well with Peter and Colin, and we figure that out later as well. So this whole thing, to me, is leading up to a big reveal at the end, getting back at Peter or Marissa. Or one of them getting back at each other, this fractured marriage. We see throughout that there's some tension there in the marriage. That they talk about it really early on in both episodes that Peter, I wouldn't call him an absentee father, but he's not like engaged, if you will. He's clearly a good dad when Milo's around. That's how it's portrayed. But when he's not directly involved, it seems like he could care less. He doesn't really care about the pickup or the drop off or feeding the guy or whatever. He just wants to play with them, have a good time, and that's that. So to me, that's interesting because again, going back to the Marissa, the Sarah Snook element of this, I'm like, okay, there's resentment there. Is she trying to get at him for something? And we immediately get this investigation, which I thought was great. They didn't waste any time. It's a missing child. If this was a missing person, oftentimes you have to wait at least like 24, 48 hours unless you really have some sort of like evidence or something backing it up because people are adults and sometimes you just want to, disappear. But with a kid, it starts ramping up faster, obviously, because they're a child, especially when they're 5 years old. So we immediately get this investigation. That's where Michael Pena, the lead detective, comes in. He's an integral part of this entire show.
Yes.
And he is shown immediately as I wouldn't say not on the scent, but he has a lot going on. It's clear his mind is not just on the investigation. He's dealing with a lot of other things, partly due to his son. He has a son with a learning disability who is nonverbal, and that's a big part of his life. And clearly that weighs on him. So we get this guy who's clearly really smart. It's portrayed as that immediately, but it's also illustrated as there's something off with him as well. And it's never really shown as malicious, but I wouldn't say inept or anything, but maybe his head's just not always in the right place. That's what I was gearing from the first few episodes. And then we kind of find out that he locks in and is able to really connect all these dots. But initially, they really don't know what's going on. The only lead they have is Carrie Finch. That's it. So they're trying to kind of figure some stuff out, point some dots, and this is where it gets really interesting to me because they have the press conference, right?
Yeah.
And it's clear that Jenny is really trying to cozy up to Marissa. And the fact she's there, I thought was very interesting. Why are you at this press conference? Wouldn't this be a sore subject? Still, Marissa clearly doesn't think so. But Jenny's there. Peter immediately sniffs this out. He's like, what is going on here? And then one of my favorite moments of the entire show is this press row filled with reporters. It's almost comical. It's a bit ridiculous, but I did get a kick out of it. They're just screaming at her, like literally screaming at Marissa, all these types of questions, which is realistic. But they were also just blurting comments as well. Like, are you doing this for money? Which didn't make a ton of sense because they're rich already. Are you trying to, garner sympathy? There was like weird comments like that coming out of these people. Like, did you stage this? Just a lot of weird accusations being thrown out. And that to me is a critical point of the show that I don't think a lot of people have talked about, because for the first time, we see Marissa really totally break down, not because of just the disappearance of her son, right? But the world around her as well. Now we're starting to get an insight about like the background of her and Peter's relationship, how she thinks of the people around her. I thought that was a really critical scene.
Yeah, well, that entire time when they were at the press conference before that, she said, okay, we need a good public image. We need people to know that this is, we're not the bad guys here. This is our son went missing. We need to get him back. So when they're firing those questions at her, remember, she doesn't know that her firm is apparently in debt or whatever. Jake Lacy knew, and he makes this phone call. He's like, what can I pay you to not have this happen? And we're like, okay, does this have anything to do with Milo or just another red herring? It turns out that the reason why he was making that call there with no one around was because he knew that these questions were going to come at them, and he was going to try and make them not happen, make those questions not appear in the press conference interviews, a portion of it. I do want to get to Jake Lacy, though, first, because also while that's going on, Michael Pena, the detective, is there as well before the press conference starts. And he's kind of just asking Jake Lacy some general questions about his siblings. Why are they staying with him? Why does he pay for all their stuff? All kinds of, whereabouts, basically. Jake Lacy's younger brother is kind of a paraplegic-esque. He doesn't really walk well on his own. He has this injury, this spinal injury, that he's not able to really do basic fundamental things, essentially. So he stays in this kind of 4-car garage in a little shaft in their own home here, which is, again, it's a massive house.
It's basically a tripped out apartment. That's basically what it looks like.
Basically. And then Gia, his sister, is kind of a, now sober but formerly drug addict. She took a lot of pills, and she's now, kind of rehabbing out of that. So he's essentially the guy who he's like, I'm going to be there for them. I'm going to take care of all their stuff, take care of all their needs. It was a lot of, at first I thought, okay, maybe he's just being a good sibling. He's just being a good older brother. He's trying to take care of his younger siblings, which is totally fine. As we progress, and in the first 3 or 4 episodes, you can kind of tell he has a little bit of Muncho by proxy, I need to have everyone around me be in need of taking care so I can be the hero type of thing. I didn't think that would be that important, but it felt like one of those weird little, okay, he's got an interesting, wired brain that this is how he operates. I didn't know if it'd play into the Milo thing, but I felt like, okay, it's another one of these characters that have some kind of plot hole that will be figured out with this whole sibling thing. But yeah, I that was before the press conference, but I thought that it was interesting that Jake Lacy's character, once again, never really told Sarah Snook, his wife, that these things were happening. He wanted to do everything by himself. He wanted to make the call by himself. He wanted to take care of everything, be the hero of the episode, if you will. And this kind of starts to lead to a bit of a deteriorating marriage.
Yeah, and you didn't bring this up, and I haven't either yet, but Jake Lacy is kind of typecasted at this point. He was essentially a version of this character on White Lotus, and he just ran it back. It felt like I was watching the same guy. If I meet Jake Lacy, I expect him to act exactly like this. And so as soon as I saw him and I saw the kind of character he had, again, we have prior knowledge of this actor. So we could kind of sniff out something's wrong with him because we know how this guy operates. Mm-hmm. We didn't know exactly what it was, but Peter did not have the luxury for us of being innocent. We knew something was wrong there because it's just who he is. Sure. And there is some element of both his character in White Lotus and here with All Our Fault of like cowardness. There's also that element. Like we see this often in sitcoms, you have kind of a bad character, if you will, and they're kind of goofy at the same time, and
Sure.
in their cowardice, and they kind of tuck their tail between their legs every time they get caught. But when they're not caught, they do all these things, their hands in all these parts, and they're trying to manipulate. And that's more towards where Jake Lacy leaned in White Lotus. Here was a bit more deliberate. He still had elements of that character, but it was more cunning, more sinister,
Much more cunning.
and obviously much darker as
Oh,
well.
White
But
Lotus. He was like, yeah, White Lotus. He was the rich snob that wanted his mom.
he was
to
a
be
goofier version of this character.
Yes,
Less directly harmful version of this character for sure.
exactly right. Yeah, White Lotus. He wanted everything to be perfect. He was like the rich snob essentially. Now we see in this show that he's a lot more calculated, a lot more cunning, and we see him talk to Michael Pena, I believe, for the second time at that before that press conference, where he's kind of telling him, Gia has a troubled past. His sister, she was one that's at fault for the why Brian is the way he is, why he can't really walk on his own. He's making it known that everything that happens in their family is a lot of the other two people's fault, and he has to kind of clean up everyone's mess. He's making that very, very known early on in the show that he's the one who has to clean up the mess of his two delinquent siblings, essentially. So I thought that was a very interesting, keynote. I'm like, okay, that might come into account later if these people are not, very, if they're not the best siblings in the world, maybe they screw up. I don't know. Also, is Jake Lacy a reliable narrator? Is he just saying this just to, kind of save face? Is he telling the truth? I don't know. But all those things we're going to end up getting resolved, essentially. But I did think it was interesting in that episode 3 where, Jake Lacy's kind of setting the foundation there. And also that episode 3 is a lot of Michael Pena, again, we touched on him earlier. I liked how all the episodes kind of mattered to a degree. Like I thought episode 3, for the most part, I thought it would be, or episode 4, I should say. I thought that was a filler episode. I really did. I thought, okay, it's character development for Michael Pena's character. We know he has a son at home. He wants to get him into school really bad. I thought all that was just, okay, nice character development for the lead detective of the show. I did not think that it would actually have a profound impact later in the show, but it does. I just liked how all the early episodes, because I see in some shows, episode 1, great hook, and then you have a couple episodes where it's like, okay, filler. We now get back to where it picks up.
They lose itself. I thought the first 4 episodes, at least 3.5. I thought 4 went off track a little bit at times, but I thought the first 4 episodes were really great. Then we hit a bit of a lull, and then we end strong. That's how I perceived it. I just want to backtrack a smidge because this was important to bring up. So basically in the investigation, the main part of the investigation is about this interaction between Carrie Finch and Milo at the Chicago Marathon, which I thought was kind of funny. Because it makes sense. A marathon is obviously, there's a ton of people there, especially like Chicago, Boston, LA, New York. These are really big events. I don't know if people traditionally know that, but you have a ton of fans, people just watching just to watch. Obviously, friends and family of those running. It's just a lot of chaos, which is a really smart place to try to make a move. And that's what it was perceived as. Carrie tried to make her move at the Chicago Marathon while Peter was running. Marissa was dealing with some business, and Milo's nanny is kind of, too trusting. And we saw that the relationship between the Irvine's nanny and Carrie Finch was really orchestrated by Carrie Finch. She's planting all these seeds. She's kind of playing the Irvine's nanny like a fiddle. Like it's everything she needs to know. She's just bringing up constantly. And
she's asking her things. Yes, exactly right.
Yes. And it was, again, apparent that the Irvine's nanny, maybe not, I wouldn't say dumb or anything, but she's just oblivious. She's naive to the situation. She's just happy she has a friend that she can talk to about nannying. And she mentioned a few times throughout the show, which I thought was funny. Like, this is just kind of what the nannies do, it appears. They just kind of hang out. They talk. They have similar jobs, They don't have coworkers, so this is kind of the closest thing they have, this community of nannies.
Right.
So Carrie Finch tries to basically run away with Milo. This man stops her, and we need to figure out who this man is. So they do geotags, really interesting stuff. I thought this was a cool scene. They're trying to put stuff together. They see a flash in the background. Basically, they get an image of this man. And this is when the show gets fun, because at the end of the episode, we pan back to Esther. She's watching the news. This is an amazingly shot scene. Esther walks away from the television. Lo and behold, it's the man with Esther, who we can assume is the son. And basically, every time in the show you assume something, it's not quite what you think. It sort of is, but
Yeah,
not really. And so we figure out that
there's
this
some connection.
man,
Yeah.
yes, there's this a connection, but again, not paint by numbers, not what you would perceive instantly. So it is her son in a way, not really. She basically took him from the foster system. He was already older at that point. She took him in, helped him graduate high school, and then he kind of went on his way. And I thought it was a little bit strange how they tried to have their cake and eat it too here, where she's like, yeah, really cared for him for a few years, but now I have no idea what he's up to, which is kind of contradictory, especially for like an older person who took someone in like that. To me, that's just not really in line with a character of that nature. You would think that they would have some contact with the person, even if it's not frequent. They try to say that at his job, when he got his job, she called him to calm him down. So we don't really know who this guy is, but this is kind of the crux of the middle episodes. Who is this guy, and how is he involved with Carrie Finch? What did you think of this entire storyline?
I liked it a lot. Now, again, we only get to the Chicago Marathon because Anna, the nanny for the Irvines, finally goes to the police station.
She finally cracks. Yeah.
She finally cracks and says, yeah, I've had interactions with Carrie before. As a matter of fact, I actually one time did let her go with Milo by herself in the Chicago Marathon. And that's when we obviously see, she says, there's a man there. I didn't make out his face. He had this red flannel on. I don't know who he is. Never saw him before. But obviously Michael Pena and the detectives finally find out who this guy is. They get his name, Kyle Smith. And it's like, okay, what relation does he have to this? And obviously we find out Esther is his foster mom. And he's the address that obviously we know Sarah Snook got sent to in the very first scene of the show. So obviously there's some kind of link here. We know that obviously they're linked because they have a foster connection there. And about 6 years ago, they stopped talking, whatever it was, or 5-6 years ago, whenever he started getting his job at this drywall company, they kind of, lose major conversations and they don't have as tight a relationship as they did whenever obviously he was living there with her. So I thought that was very interesting. Then we obviously see him straight up with Milo in the car, and we have Milo as this brown hair. He's kind of like changed a little bit, but we know that he has Milo. We know he's in the car with him. We hear them over talking about what's going on with Carrie Finch. She's famous. She has to be on the move all the time. So it's like, okay, they're clearly working in cahoots here. So Carrie Finch and Kyle Smith were able to kind of put two and two together. They see each other at the marathon with Milo by himself. Now, obviously, we know Carrie Finch has Milo, and we now see that Kyle Smith has Milo in the car, and they're going somewhere. They're going to a gas station to get,
Can I ask you a question? If you
ahead.
are on the run and you go to a gas station and one of the mac and cheese boxes is a massive hole in it, why in the world would you say no to getting a new one? That makes you look like a psychopath. And sure, I will remember you at that point. If you just went and returned it, no one's going to know who you are. It'll be like, oh, that guy got screwed. The fact that he said no as the mac and cheese is pouring out of the box, I'm like, okay, that's going to matter, obviously, because this is super intentional, and it does matter. The clerk is able to recognize him later and pull up some CCTV.
And they now know that he wouldn't drive out of his way to a gas station. He probably lives nearby. So
yes, 100%. And that's an obvious connection to make as well. And I just thought, look, immediately, I liked this storyline. I think it really got off the rails a little bit towards the end, but instantly I'm like, okay, I really like that these people are all connected, because it's no mistake that Marissa would be sent to Esther's home. Like, that was clearly intentional. Why did that happen? And now there's seeds of doubt of Esther, because she's this old, assuming woman. She's kind of been around, like, casually. She showed up to the search for Milo. Does she have more to say about this situation? Is she orchestrating all of this? Is somehow she connected and they don't realize? So I thought that was fun, because that's just another few people that you can add together. And at this point, in the middle episodes, we're not really close to learning who the actual mastermind is. There are so many people on the table that it's kind of hard to wrap your head around all of this.
Yeah, we don't know who it is. We also are getting some kind of clues as to there's people working together. We obviously have the phone call in that exact same episode where someone who we have not heard his voice yet, but calls Jake Lacey and says something about a ransom. Because obviously it always comes down to money in these kidnappings mostly. And he says, hey, bring the money by whatever, or you won't find out what happened to your kid, essentially. So we know that somebody does have Jake Lacey. Remember, we had a prank call earlier, but this one was a real one. We know that this one has Milo. We've already seen Carrie Finch with Milo. We've already seen Kyle Smith with Milo. Now we hear this other man who we don't know we don't really know, we have never heard his voice before, but he's calling Jake Lacey to tell him that we have your son. And of course, Jake Lacey wants to be the hero. He does not go to the police. He's gathering up all of his ransom money, putting it in a bag like you see in all the movies. And he's going to try and do this all himself, like always. So I thought that was interesting. Little subject there. But as we get into episode 5, they're doing the what is it? They're scaling or doing whatever they do. They're walking across the entire city. They're canvassing, I think is what it's called.
Yes.
Right. So they're trying to see, does anyone have any idea where he is? We're going to all go out as a large group and see.
Which is traditional. Usually, if you think it's more of a murder, you kind of go by lakes, forest, brush, like, where you might hide someone.
Exactly.
Because it's a kidnapping, presumably the child is still alive, because if they were to pass, you wouldn't have the ransom. Not that anyone knows that besides Peter, but regardless, it's just assumed that the child's alive this entire time. So you would canvass an actual town. So all that makes sense because someone needs to have seen something, surely. And it comes to find out that no one saw anything, which I thought was kind of funny. And if you think about it, what didn't make a ton of sense is, Mike, they're canvassing the area around the marathon, right? That's how it was presumed to be.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not where he went missing. So the marathon is kind of irrelevant because why would anyone remember just this random guy? I mean, maybe you remember this interaction, but as we've seen from the CCTV and the geotags from Instagram and whatnot, the guy has a ball cap and a flannel. You can't really make out his face. What would be smarter to do, significantly smarter, is if you went to the school where Milo was taken and you start asking, like, hey, what happened here? We know Carrie Finch took him, but was there, like, what did she say? Did she say she was going anywhere? Did anything happen? Are there cameras around the school? Again, it's a little bit of an overanalyzation, but I do watch a lot of crime shows, and that is kind of the next plausible step. So I didn't like that too much. Nothing really came of it. All that really comes of it is this scene where the brother Brian, the disabled brother, is kind of dropped off, and he's trying to, play his part. He's trying to walk around, and he just can't. He really can't because of his condition, and it just furthers this narrative of him really not liking his situation. He's just really upset, and that to me jumped off the screen because I'm like, okay, he has a gripe, and sure, his gripe at this time we think is with Leah. But he could just be mad at the world at the same time as well, because he's clearly in pain. He's clearly defeated. So I thought that whole canvassing scene, really all we got out of it was furthering this divide between Brian and the rest of the people in the show.
Yes. So Brian gets back from this canvassing thing, and he is over it. He's like, I'm done with my pain meds. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm in pain. I need help. And we see Peter Irvine, Jake Lacey's character, come over. And he's like, hey, let me make you some soup. Let's talk about what happened all those years ago. Do you remember what happened when you were 5 years old? I mean, it's like a little jet lag, maybe. Do you not really remember what happened? Remember you ran on the coffee table and you had you tripped over your own feet, and that's how it happened. And now I'm just trying to look out for you. It was a very nice heart-to-heart moment from the two brothers there. Obviously, he's making him soup, and Brian points out, there's no soy in any of the stuff I buy. I'm trying to, because we have this foreshadowing element of, hey, Peter Irvine is allergic to soy.
They've brought it up a few times, but this is a more on the nose situation. They mentioned it briefly with allergies at the beginning. Does Milo have any allergies? But this is the first time we really have it mean something of consequence because, again, they're trying to have this brotherly moment, and as you alluded to, they're just kind of talking about the incident, and it's clear that Brian doesn't know anything. And it's a slight criticism because you're 5, you're in kindergarten at this point. If something that traumatic happened, you'd presume you'd remember it just because you are old enough to form memories. He was very young, and perhaps it was so traumatic that it kind of just blocked out. It could have happened so fast. He could have been in so much pain. It could have just happened. But what did you think of this whole notion that a 5-year-old simply could not remember the biggest moment of their entire life.
See, as a person who was a former 5-year-old, I think I had some
Yeah,
experience.
both of us,
Both of us used to be
two-time
5-year-olds.
5-year-olds here.
We are two-time 5-year-olds. I remember specific scenarios, but the problem is I don't remember all the details. So even right now, I will be like, "What did I do?" Like, so because for example, here I was 5 years old in 2007, so I would remember something to me that happened in 7, but I would not necessarily remember all the details in that exact scenario, like in that exact scene. What was I doing? What happened in that? Who came over here? I would not be able to remember all the details. So I could see in Brian's scenario where if he ends up having this traumatic spinal injury, of course he remembers having it. Does he remember how it all went down? Probably not as a 5-year-old. So I could see where the memory would be a little bit foggy, a little bit, because it probably all happened at once. So I could see how that would happen. But basically, what we're having is once again Jake Lacy narrating this scenario of how it was Gia's fault. She was super hyper as a kid. She's chasing him around the house or in the living room. The coffee table's there. He stumbles over his own feet. And that's what happens. And it's like, okay, well, they were just having fun. But I'm happy to help you. And even though you're in this bad position, I'm here as an older brother. I will be able to take care of you. And obviously, he's looking for his pain meds, even though Brian does not like taking the pain meds. He is not into it. He likes the chair where you can kind of drive around. There's some freedom element of the chair. Obviously, Jake Lacy's like, no on the chair. Don't like wheels in the house. Not dealing it. So there's this little element. I'm like, okay, what does that matter? And obviously,
which seems ridiculous because we saw Leah basically talking to Brian earlier about the fact that he needs the chair more often because the walking is only hurting him further.
Only hurting him more, yeah.
And then Peter kind of has the opposite reaction of, hey, these floors are expensive, man. So no wheels in here. So I thought that was a good dichotomy.
But we end up figuring out now after Peter leaves the room, we get a phone call on Brian. From the neurosurgeon that he went to a couple weeks ago. And obviously Peter had told him, he's not a good fit for this. That's what the neurosurgeon allegedly told Peter Irvine. His younger brother was not a fit for this surgery. Then we have the phone call back to Brian, and the neurosurgeon is picking up the phone. And he says, "Hey, is this Brian?" And Brian says, "Yeah, I know I'm not a fit for the surgery." And the neurosurgeon is kind of like, excuse me, you are a perfect fit for the surgery, for the back surgery that you can get. Did your brother tell you something incorrectly or something like that? So there's this rift. It's like, okay, Peter's once again not telling the truth as to exactly what happened. And you have this sibling rift now. It's like, okay, they really can't trust each other at all because Jake Lacy once again is trying to, play the role of, I got you. I'm the caretaker here. You don't need all that other stuff. You don't need to be able to walk perfectly normal again, get a job, move out, start your own life. I got you. So that was another one that I'm like, okay, does it have to do with Milo? Probably not, but it's another one of these other plot holes that probably matters in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, and I don't care that Brian doesn't remember what happened to him when he was 5. I thought that was an unfair criticism I kept saying. I thought it was weird that Brian didn't go to see if he was eligible himself. Like, I thought that was very strange. It's like, I don't love that. I wish that was written a little bit better.
But we can see that Peter wants to take the reins himself. They've established.
Yeah, it's indicative of his character. You would just think, normally, if this kind of thing arose, you would assume that said doctor would want the patient there. That's just my assumption. I don't know if that's actually true, but that was a critique I had personally. And it does obviously end up mattering quite a bit because right after this, we get this dramatic scene of Brian he is off the wall. He is drunk as a skunk. He's driving around the house. He's barreling into everything. He's, just mixing up all of his words. He's stuttering constantly. And we get the big reveal that we were waiting for here, that Brian tells Peter, "I know what you did." And
it's also his drunk confidence. Like, he's drunk. He's like, you know what? I just heard you lie about the neurosurgeon. What else are you lying about? And I'm
he kind of goes off on him.
Yeah.
And this is moments before we get what's supposed to be the big interview between Marissa and the news station. And her and Peter have been fighting kind of this entire episode. So this is a really rough Peter episode. This is the first time we see the cracks between Peter and everyone else.
Things are melting down.
It's clear that Marissa and Jenny are getting really close. Peter doesn't like that at all. He's taken aback by that. He sees before him that his wife is kind of not trusting of him. Colin goes off on him as well a few times for his treatment of Leah, who it's revealed that's the girlfriend here. They have a secret relationship. that doesn't come up until way later, which I thought was interesting as well. That was a good wrinkle in my opinion. So Peter's just kind of getting hosed here, and then all of a sudden, this show takes a dramatic turn because all of this is happening, and we're so hung up on kind of what's before us, and then it all changes because they get the call Milo's been discovered. Wow, okay. So the chase is over for now, and I thought that was interesting because at this point we're only a little past the halfway mark.
Like 8 days.
I assumed that the resolution would come in at least episode 7 or 8. That's just kind of how these shows usually operate. So the fact that it came in the middle, I was like, okay, we're going to do some backtracking. I think this is kind of interesting. But how are we going to justify doing said backtracking? Because we still have no real inkling of what's going on. We see all these people are kind of, in each other's jars, if you will. There's all this cross-pollination.
Right.
We just don't know why any of it's relevant. Because some of it's not really relevant at all. But we eventually get there. So what did you think about how kind of seemingly out of nowhere, the Milo being gone thing is just immediately resolved? He's just back. Welcome back, Milo.
I was like, there's no way this is actually Milo. It's probably a different kid. There's no way it's Milo.
I thought the same thing.
I figured, by the way, in the very first episode, we get the day 27 flash forward of Michael Pena looking at the board of all these suspects. So I figured, okay, this is probably a little bit longer than a week of Milo being gone. Evidently, we get him. He's found by like day 7 or 8. So it's like right at his birthday, I believe, where he gets found. And he's back home, and he's at the police station. It's like, wait, they just dropped off at the police station? This doesn't sound right at all. Like, because why would Carrie Finch, who apparently has this unbeknownst, loyalty to this kid, she just wants him so bad, why would she just leave him at the police station? So I'm like, okay, something's not right here. So I was kind of getting a little bit. The scent was getting okay. This must be an inside job. Okay, it's clearly Carrie's working with Kyle. Maybe their relationship, we don't know. We find out later their ex, their boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. But what happens, because this is clearly an inside job, why else would we already know that Jake Lacy has the ransom call? However, there was no ransom, there was no money that made him get back to the police department. It wasn't like we saw him have the bag of money but leave it in the house. He didn't actually take it with him, apparently, at least not that we saw up to that point. So we were like, okay, why is he back at the police station? What's going on here? So I thought that was a very interesting cliffhanger to end episode 5 on. Because I was like, what is happening right now? What is happening? We obviously got this whole meltdown of the siblings where right before the interview happens, Sarah Snook is asking Jake Lacy, what's your favorite thing about Milo? And his favorite thing about Milo is when Milo gets nightmares so that Jake Lacy can come in the room.
I audibly laughed at this. I thought this was hilarious. It was good. Again, it was a good representation of the character that he is.
Yes.
But I thought it was so ridiculous that, again, it made me laugh. But I thought it was decent writing. I think it was plausible that someone like him would say that.
And then obviously what happens after that right now is Brian comes in and says, you were in the kitchen that night, right? You were in the kitchen. So how in the world did you see me fall over the coffee table? That would not be in the direct line of sight. So where really were you? You weren't in the kitchen. And, Jake Lacy's kind of fraggles a little bit. He's like, okay, I was in the living room, but I saw you fall over your feet right there. I saw Leah chasing you around. I saw it happen. And they're kind of peeling back the onion. And eventually you realize, and I'm able to clock this kind of right after the soup scenario. I'm like, I think Jake Lacy was the one who did it. I think it was actually his fault. He's just
me too. I immediately thought the same thing. And to be honest, I didn't care about this all that much.
Sure. But it has to do with his character for sure.
Yes, it's just another element of Peter being a bit shady. I thought the storyline was a bit shoehorned in. I thought it was... Look, if... I understood why you wouldn't tell your brother that you did this traumatic thing immediately after it happens. You would think it would come out. You would think someone would have told him at some point.
Yeah.
You think maybe Leah, who is presumed to be older... That's kind of the plot hole in this entire situation, is that Leah doesn't remember anything. So that was strange. But
yeah, but basically what we find out is Jake Lacy sticks his leg out and trips Brian, and that's how Brian has this injury to his spine. Gia takes the fall for it, says, I was
Leah, yeah.
Or Leah, sorry, not Gia. Leah takes the fall for it, and basically all she remembers is she chased him around and he fell. And she doesn't remember Jake Lacy obviously sticking his leg out, and he's the one who causes the accident. But yes, go ahead. I thought it was an interesting plot hole. I'm like, okay, I know something's up here with these 3 siblings, and I'm pretty sure it's Jake Lacy's fault, but I want to hear how it all unraveled. So that whole drunk Brian, scene where he's just spilling everything out and he's trying to, grill like a sergeant out of this the information out of Jake Lacey's character, and all this is happening while Sarah Snook is like, hey guys, they're about to be here, please not right now. That whole scene of the the tension and the build up right at 8 o'clock I thought was really well done. And then obviously as that happens, right as they come here, Milo's been found. So
yeah, and I thought it was fun. All these people were in cars at some point, and the cars kept having the time zoomed in on, so you could see a timeline brewing. It mattered to an extent, but not in the way I wanted it to. I thought really there was going to be some element of this happened at this time. Where were you? You'd have to like kind of go back to your brain and kind of recall where each person was at each time. Didn't really work that way, but I thought it was at least good. Again, building up to the tumultuous 8 o'clock. This interview that was fun, but again, Milo's found. So now we get to the point where it's just kind of awkward now because they're trying to adjust to Milo being back. They're happy, but they still have no idea what happened. So we're trying to figure this out as well. The investigation keeps rolling on. I want to touch on this super fast because my biggest critique of the show was Jenny's character as a whole, and we'll get into that in a little bit. Okay. But we get into a little bit of an insight of her life here because the funniest moment of the show by far, I was dying laughing at this.
Quizix.
It is Quizix, which is her husband, who we see briefly.
Wait, real quick. Did you ever buy Quizix as a real thing? Did you ever think he was actually going to Quizix?
Okay, so we had something kind of similar at my school. It wasn't exactly the same, but it was. There's something like that exists. So I thought
totally fair.
I knew it wasn't necessarily Quizix, but I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know if he was hooking up with another teacher or a student. I didn't know where this was going. I knew he was shady. I didn't necessarily pull out Quizix as the reason why he was shady, though.
No, but did you think by the third time he said, I have Quizix tonight, I can't do it? Did you really think that
it was clearly important because they kept hammering home the word Quizix? The fact that we both know and remember it, I thought something was a little off.
Is he going to Quizix really? But go ahead.
Yeah, and so we get a point where Jenny's picking up her son, and the other mom, who we see a few times, kind of the leader of the PTO, if you will. She kind of runs the school events and whatnot. She's been nagging. She's kind of off to the side as someone we're supposed to care about, but they never do enough of a job to hammer home her character. She's one of the more than just an annoying Karen-esque mom.
Yes.
So she makes the side comment hey, I saw your husband. He was just kind of in a parking lot, which is weird because, the husband's license plate. Oh, that's a little strange. Whatever. I'll suspend disbelief there. So we go and we see the husband. He is leaned back in his car. The chair is all the way leaned back, just like this. And he's on TikTok, scrolling away. He's doom scrolling like this with his finger, just going. He's not even watching the video. He's just, scrolling.
He's just
drinking a milkshake. He looked like he was 15 here. And
he did.
I think that was the point. It was so comedic. It was ridiculous.
Hilarious.
Jenny pulls up right in front of him. She's like, hey, man. I believe his name is Richie. Hey, Richie. It's over, man. This is ridiculous. What is going on? You are a terrible husband. You're kind of a terrible father as well. Every time you're supposed to take care of the son, you kind of complain about it. And we get both sides because the thing with Jenny is she is hardly home. It definitely gets painted that Jenny is obsessed with her work. She doesn't really care about her home life all that much. So in one hand, she kind of is trying to draw sympathy as being this mom that does everything for her son. But on the other token, we often see her at work away from her son, away from kind of being a mom, if you will. So it's an interesting dichotomy, which I thought was going to matter a little bit more than it did. And we'll circle back to Jenny at the end when we do some superlatives for this show. But I thought that was an interesting part of the latter episodes here. So as episode 6 unfolds, we come to find out that it really is a Carrie production. It's really clearly all Carrie. And then we ultimately get to episode 7, which was my
Well,
least favorite.
real quick,
Yeah,
before
yeah.
episode 7, episode 6 ends with Carrie going into the house with a gun. So just to set up episode
Yes,
7.
I actually forgot about that part. I knew it was a cliffhanger. I forgot it was 6 and not 7.
Yeah, and episode 6, we find out that Colin has been messing around with the accounts. He's in a gambling debt again.
Yes,
He's going back into. He's still betting. He's still a sports addict, a gambling addict. I don't know. I mean specifically, but he has a bookie that he has not paid yet, and he's spiraling out of control. And he's using the accounts to. And of course, Sarah Snook assumes that this has to do with why someone took Milo.
Yeah, the bookie ends up dead, as does the why can't I remember his name? Esther's foster son. He also ends up dead. Kyle, thank you. So they're dead. So we know that. So that's interesting, because we're like, how in the world is this happening?
Right. Ron Murphy is dead, and then Kyle.
Is Carrie the psychopath killer? Did someone put her up to this? So there's still enough questions, but we get episode.
Right. Well, real quick, also before episode 7, it's inferred that she kills Kyle, who at that time we did not know is her boyfriend.
Oh, heavily inferred. Heavily
and it's
inferred.
also inferred because Michael Pena goes to the house of, we now know, Carrie's mother, and she said, "What's the relation here with you and Ron Murphy, this bookie?" She's like, "Oh, I had a kid with him. You know, she's about 20 now." So we find out that he's connected to his daughter, obviously, is Carrie Finch, who is the main suspect here. So now the bookie ends up dead, and his daughter possibly killed him. So we have this scenario now where did she kill her boyfriend and her dad? So it's painted as this whole thing now where, Ron Murphy's dead, and then obviously Kyle Smith is dead. Those are 2 people that were involved, possibly with Carrie Finch.
And Mike, I was saving that only because I think it was also supposed to draw suspicion that she walks in with a gun and is pointing it at like all the main suspects that are in the home at that time. So I think what the producers were thinking, in my opinion, was, is it Carrie, or is she trying to also kill someone that put her up to this?
That's what I was thinking. Yes.
I thought that was important as well. Episode 7 is where the show lost me for a second, because this is the flashback episode with Carrie kind of dissecting why she did all this. And this was maybe a bridge too far for me. So we go through, and it's sad. She's a young girl. She wants to be a mom, presumably because she doesn't like her mom, so she wants to have a baby, which I've heard like women say this jokingly before, but she was clearly serious about it. And it was evident that she had some sort of, disability or shortcoming, or however you want to phrase it. She wasn't necessarily like a normal teenage girl. So she has this boyfriend. They're trying to get pregnant, clearly, and loses the baby. And she kind of spirals after that. And then this is where it gets a little ridiculous. So she goes to work for her dad at this bar to pay off her mom's debt, because she was kind of working up all these baby things like a, and she used her mom's credit card. And she's like, "Hey, you got to pay me off somehow." So the only way she could ponder paying off her mom is going to work for her dad's bar. Okay, fair enough. So working at the bar, one day she kind of, pulls out the register underneath, and it's all these fake IDs. So clearly she understands that her dad is a shady character. Then fast forward a little bit, because this is all the relevant part, really, in my opinion. We fast forward a little bit. We see that the dad is trying to go repay a debt owed to him, which is Colin. Colin owes the dad money, and Carrie is just with him. As you do, you take your daughter to shakedowns all the time. So this is where you lose me.
Okay.
Yeah. Did you think I was lost before this?
I don't know.
No, this to me was a little ridiculous. Carrie gets out of the car. Why would you do that? I know she's a little off her rocker, but why would you ever even think to get out of this car? She gets out of the car. Who's playing in this majestic field where it's I believe it's Easter weekend in this timeline as well, right? So
Easter
you have this, you have this gorgeous house on this big property, this massive ranch. So there's no one really around, and Milo is presumably playing by himself, which to me was ridiculous. At this point, he's 3 or 4 years old. Why in the world would he be playing by himself? That doesn't even make sense. On this massive ranch, by the way. It's not like it's just in the backyard in the house where you can see him. It's a massive ranch. And somehow, some way, Miss Carrie is able to just sneak on over and talk to Milo. And Mike, the word that I don't want to disrespect, but in this situation I think it was misused dramatically. A mother's intuition. She has a mother's intuition. Mike, here's the problem with the mother's intuition. And this is skipping ahead, but we have to skip ahead for me to make this point here.
Okay.
At no point did she have a realistic ability to think that her son was alive. At no point.
No, of course
she
not.
was not conscious during the accident. How in the world would she have a mother's intuition over a random child, over a family that she does not know? Because again, she was unconscious during an accident. How in the world is this possible? This is the bridge too far for me. It doesn't make sense. Why would she even consciously think her child is alive? She was incapacitated by the accident. She was badly hurt by the accident. How could she not understand that her child was killed in the accident? That, to me, was the bridge too far. How Carrie was able to connect that Milo, again, this is a spoiler, but we have to spoil it in order to talk about this here, on how Milo was actually her biological son.
Well, here's the thing. At the end of episode 7, we see that she is in the hospital and she's kind of replaying this. No, that's not, like, her son is being taken away, essentially.
Yes.
And she does not believe that it's her son, actually. She believes that her son is alive.
But there's no way of her to possibly know this. And that's what was upsetting to me. Because we see that she is incapacitated by the words that they say in the show. She was not, come to. So how would she even think that? That's the problem.
Well,
here's my upset. I just want to get this out real fast.
Sure.
Here's why I was upset. They could have done the same thing, but 10 times better by making it this simple. She's gets in the accident, right? She's injured, but she's still conscious, right? She's like, oh my God, really, really hurt, badly hurt. And she could have seen Peter take the child, but in her mind, is she just hallucinating? Is this because she's so injured? And that could replay in her mind for years and years, and that could really upset her. The problem is they tried to make it seem that she was incapacitated enough for Peter to take the child, but also kind of aware enough to understand that her child didn't actually die. To me, that is just 5 bridges too far.
Okay, I mean, it could be 5 bridges too far.
Do you think that's a valid criticism?
Maybe, but I think that the show did a good job of portraying that she does have a mental illness. So I believe that even if
that is a good point, because even if it was 100% true, even if she watched the child die in front of her, the kind of character that she had, perhaps she would say, no, he's not actually dead.
Exactly, and she didn't see the child die in front of her. So of course that she has this.
Right.
Did he actually die?
No, that's a fine point. That's a fine point.
She has a bit of a mental disorder. Obviously, we later find out it's called synesthesia. Synesthesia, I believe is what it's called. But she is a little bit of a troubled kid. We see her relationship with her mom. Her dad's whatever. But she has that issue going on. But I think that it didn't lose me there.
Okay, it lost you later?
No. We skipped a little bit farther than I thought we were going to skip. But I want to go back to episode 7. So in the flashback episode, we see she confronts Kyle, who she has a kid with, obviously, with Milo. Yep. She said, hey, we're going to take him. And Kyle's like, I don't think so. This is the Chicago Marathon flashback. Then I knew we had to get a flashback of the Chicago Marathon because we're not just going to get one interaction of her with the guy's face turn. We're going to find out what happened in this entire discourse. We're going to have a flashback episode. So we see what happens in the Chicago Marathon. Kyle Smith is like, I don't know about this, man. This is her kid. We can't just take a kid he's been living with his parents for 5 years now. We can't just take the kid. And then he gets a look at the kid's face. And he's like, yeah, it looks like my dad. I'm not gonna lie to you. It looks like that would be our kid. Theoretically. Again, I don't know. Maybe it's a bridge too far for you, but she thinks it's her kid. And now the guy that she was sleeping with that is supposedly the father of her child also believes, yeah, that could be our kid. Looks kind of similar to other genes that we might have. So they both put 2 and 2 together. He's like, all right, screw it. I'll go along with this plan. Now we should go back to Esther because she has this whole plan of how am I going to steal this kid at the school? Obviously, he knows who I am now. We do this whole thing where we go to these milkshake shacks every single Tuesday. He knows who I am. We have a pretty good relationship. But how are we going to get 4 hours away that we can actually take him away and not have anyone, throw off anyone's scent here? But Kyle obviously puts the address in. He's the one who texts the address to Sarah Snook, and he's like, hey, play date. We're going here. So he sends her to Esther's house, which, of course, now we linked. That's the connection. So he sends her to a place where she can kind of calm herself down for a few hours with Esther. So that makes sense. That's all. That plot hole is filled. Then she brings her dad in on it. So Ron Murphy, who's the bookie, of course, he's the one that's, instead of calling, because it looks like he steps outside of the ranch, or the little house that they're at. He steps outside and looks like he's going to try and get a passport for Milo. So they're planning on leaving the country, by the way. So this is all inferred that they're leaving the country. They're going to get a passport for Milo. She's having her dad do the whole thing.
Which would be logical. You can't be on the run the entire time. You have to have a second move. So I like that was included. They needed a different layer to this.
He is not calling to get a passport for Milo. He is calling Jake Lacey to say, hey, we got your son. Give me some ransom money. Because he's obviously just thinking about money. He's a bookie. This is what they do. So he's looking to get some money out of this thing. He's like, I don't want this kid. This isn't what's in for me. So he's not even really on their team. It feels like it's a whole family affair here of 3 people: him, his daughter, and then Kyle, who are having this kid Milo on like a adventure of a whole week. He's like, I don't want anything to do with this. So he's just looking for money out of this whole thing. So obviously he goes and takes Milo to this little motel with him and his daughter. Obviously we see Kyle never makes it there because Kyle, the boyfriend of, in this case, Carrie, ends up getting shot by the father. He's like, you know what? I'm over this guy. He's just too much for me. That one, I was like, okay, do we really need to kill him? I don't know, but he was over him. Either way, that's fine.
Yeah, felt a little much. It was because he was kind of lazy and got spotted, and they tried to suggest that they both can't be famous, but no one really gave a good indication why. Because if they're still like kind of undercover and kind of in the shadows, then does it matter? Because if one of you gets caught, the other one's like, if you're with the child, it's over anyway.
Right. So he was mad that obviously, as we mentioned, his face came up in the search. So obviously Michael Payne was able to put his face out there. He now knows he's on the run. So now they got to get out of there. And he just ends up shooting the guy and basically ending that storyline. Then he goes to the motel and they have to get a cake for Milo because it's Milo's birthday. And not Sarah Snook, the other character, Carrie Finch, goes to the mall or goes to a gas station, whatever it is, goes out to get a cake for Milo. So now it's Milo and Carrie Finch's father in the motel room by themselves. And this is where, to me, I'm saying whoever comes in this room and kills Carrie's dad, because we now know that Carrie's dad, Ron, is dead. Whoever that is the one that's in the inside job, because obviously we now know Milo does not know who the person is that dropped him off at the police station. If he would have known who it was, he would have said, yeah, the guy I've been spending the last couple of days with. He did not say that. He said, hey, I don't know. He covered my eyes. I didn't see who it was. So that told me right there, somebody on the inside was also at fault here and probably was the reason for this whole thing in the first place. But what happens was Carrie Finch walks in, her dad is dead, Milo's gone. So what the heck happened? Did her dad drive and drop him off and take the money? That's what's inferred, but no, that's not what happens, because obviously we see at the end of episode 7, we fast forward back to Carrie holding the gun. So the same way episode 6 ended is the exact same way episode 7 ended, where Carrie's holding the gun and she says she's holding the gun, and I'm thinking she's either holding it at Colin or Jake Lacey's character, because either Colin killed her dad because for some reason their gambling thing had a fallout, or Jake Lacey killed her dad and he took Milo home because he wanted to be the hero of the whole thing. So that was my thought process heading into episode 8, the finale. I'm like, okay, she's either going to shoot the person who just killed her dad, which is either Colin or Jake Lacey. That's my thought. That's why I have going in. And then we get to episode 8 where everything gets revealed, essentially.
Yeah, I thought that was a solid assumption as well. And episode 8 was really good, in my opinion, but I think it got lost a few times. So let's just go over it. So I'm going to forget some stuff. Mike might forget some stuff, but we're going to try our best here. So basically, Carrie's holding the gun, and Colin immediately gestures over to go get the gun, which is, admirable.
Sure.
He does it in a terrible way.
Yeah, really bad.
I probably wouldn't put my body in front of it. That's probably not the thing you want to do, but regardless. Yeah. So he gets shot. Thanks for coming, Colin. It died a little bit too fast for me.
Yeah.
I would have liked a little bit more drawn out. He died like instantly. I was like, okay,
Immediately.
this is a really fit, athletic, big guy. Like I think it would go a little different, but whatever.
Yeah.
So Colin goes. Lee is distraught. Then we have this moment between Peter and Carrie. It's this big reveal. Like I know what you've done, Peter. I know what you've done, and she has this recording. And before she can play said recording, Peter rushes her and shoots her. And he had time not to shoot her. He kind of wrestled the gun away. He didn't necessarily need to pull the trigger. It was clearly intentional.
Yeah.
He did it so that way Carrie could no longer talk. She's gone. She's out of the equation. This nightmare is allegedly over. But is it? Because the phone still exists. It's still there. And I thought it was weird. I don't know if you thought this as well. If he knows that this damning evidence is on the phone that he didn't want Marissa to listen to, you would think he would take the phone instantly, maybe shoot it, maybe toss it in the pool that's behind him. I don't know. You would think that that would be the initial reaction.
Well, here's the issue, though. He was so worried about getting Carrie to stop talking. The phone was on the ground, and Sarah Snook just beat him to it. I think is what.
Yeah,
happened.
he couldn't do it all at once,
right?
Which is fine. Again, sometimes you have to play devil's advocate here, but I thought that was also fine. So Marissa gets the phone and plays the recording.
Which, by the way, we as the audience have to have the recording played. So, of course, I knew he wasn't going to shoot the gun because us as the audience needs to hear what's on the phone. So I figured that's for the audience.
It would have to be played at some point, whether it's this phone, whether she has a burner phone, whatever happens. We were going to hear the recording, 100%. You don't introduce that without playing it. And the recording is kind of hilarious because it's so, again, ridiculous, but that's just how it goes. Talk me through what you thought about all of this, the recording, the aftermath, because this is where I was like, okay, this is pretty good now. But then I thought we took a left. I thought this part was really good, and then we went sideways.
So let me backtrack here because I figured about halfway through this series, I kept saying there's some kind of relation to Carrie Finch and Sarah Snook, or Carrie Finch and this kid Milo. They have to be some. I don't know if they're siblings or if they're, this was actually her kid and she ended up being in a serious, and then he's actually an orphan of Sarah Snook, because we don't actually see Sarah Snook. We do see her come into the house with him as the kid, but I was like, we don't really know for sure if this is the one that she gave birth to. We don't know for sure, but I was saying maybe there's some kind of relation here where something had to have happened 5 years ago for Carrie Finch to be so into this kid that she needs to have him in her life. That's what I was number one thinking of. I would have never pieced together that they were in a car accident because there was really no, other than two I'll get to later on, foreshadowing of a car accident in store, and there was obviously no foreshadowing of them swapping the kids. We knew Peter was a little cunning character. We did not know to the extent of what he was going to do.
I'm surprised this show had so many breadcrumbs. I'm surprised we never saw like Carrie grab her side or something and be like, oh yeah, it was from years ago. Something of that nature.
Well,
you know what I'm saying?
I think there was two good foreshadowings. They were so subtle that you might have missed them, but I thought it was...
I could have, let me know.
Okay, so let me just go ahead and get to it, because obviously, if you're someone that wants to guess the ending of the show, how could you possibly have guessed a car accident and a swapping of the kids was what... And again, car accident is never mentioned in the first 7 episodes, so we really don't know. But we have in the very second episode, I believe, a flashback a week prior to Milo getting kidnapped. We hear, or not even Milo getting kidnapped. I believe it's the first time that Jenny meets Sarah Snook, or maybe they met him. They meet up in the bathroom of some fundraising event for the school.
Yes,
they're wearing the same dress, and as they're going to take a selfie, you can see Sarah Snook's underneath
little
her shoulder.
Scar there.
It's some kind of scar, and I'm like, okay, what is that about? Maybe it'll be important. Why would they just show it and not come back to that at some point? And then they also have a flashback of 5 years ago, where they're first coming into the home with Milo back from the hospital, and you can hear Jake Lacey's character say he asked her how her head is she feeling okay, as they're coming back to the house for the first time with the kid in the little stroller there. So I was like, okay, why would her head hurt? Was she unconscious? Was she? I don't know. I had no idea.
I just chalked that up to me not knowing enough about motherhood. Like that's what I chalked that up to.
Right.
Like maybe your head hurts sometimes. I don't know.
There's no inferring that it was a car accident, but you have the scar, and then you have her coming back.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good.
And I love the way they foreshadow that because, again, it's not an obvious foreshadowing.
Super subtle. You could chalk it up to something else like I did. Yeah, no, I like that. That's good.
We both did. I thought the scar was from something else. I did not think it was a car accident. But, again, you never know. But they did kind of tease it to where if you were to guess what would happen, no one would have guessed car accident because there really wasn't any massive blaring breadcrumbs. There was, a little bit, but it was very subtle. They didn't really spend too much time on it, which I liked.
Right.
But to get to episode 8, I thought the recording was pretty hilarious. I did not think that's how Jake Lacy would kill. Because I genuinely do think Jake Lacy was just going to take the money and get his kid. Then he hears that his dad is like, yeah, she had this whole thing where you stole her kid or something like that. And she thinks that's her kid. I think once he hears that, he's like, I got to end this. I gotta kill this guy. I might have to take out Carrie myself. I can't have this kind of...
I thought it was interesting he didn't wait around for her to come back.
Right, because he obviously remembers 5 years ago what he did. Everyone else is unconscious. Carrie's unconscious at this point. She's in the car accident. Sarah Snook is unconscious from the car accident.
Milo's an infant. Milo's an infant. He was just born.
Actually, really, well, number one, Milo's dead. Noah is the one that actually they have. So
good point.
Milo never made it. Noah.
Milo, yes.
Right. Noah, it was the kid that actually survived the crash. He gets swapped in the middle of when the ambulances are coming. Jake Lacy makes a last second decision while he's on the phone with them, and he hears a baby crying, and he's like, "No way!" Right? There's the other car that got in an accident. There also is a baby there. I have a chance now to. It's so messed up. It's so unbelievably messed up. But what are the chances that the car accident is between a mother who just gave birth and a mother who just gave birth? That's an insane coincidence.
And he had the wherewithal to understand that his child was dead, but the other child was alive. There was a lot going on here. It was a little bit silly, but
of course. But it was ultimately one of the wilder. I've watched a lot of TV shows this year, and I've been ranking them. It's one of the wilder plot twist endings to a series that I've seen. Because who could have guessed you're swapping a dead kid to a very much alive kid who survives this traumatic car crash, and you assume that the other mother's dead, and Sarah Snook at this point is unconscious. She's fine, but at this point, why not make it? It's very messed up. But Jake Lacy's character once again tries to do the hero move. He tries to take care of everything himself, but it's so messed up that, of course, you see he keeps this from Sarah Snook the entire time. Truly makes her believe this is actually her kid. Yeah, we all survived the car crash. And it's just another one of the characters that this is his character the whole season. We've been building up to him lying, but acting like it's everyone else's fault. So again, with the whole thing with his siblings, how that him injuring his brother was actually his fault, and then the car crash, and obviously the reason why Milo is this coveted prize to this Carrie, aka Josephine girl, is that he was the one who took her kid. He took her kid out of her car and placed it in his car. So this whole thing of him trying to be this, caretaker to his family, which is admirable, but he's also a very cunning and messed up person because you can clearly see that this is not, you never want to ever do that. That is messed up. On all accounts, again, I know he didn't know that she was gone, or that she was still alive, I should say, but the whole thing led up to, at the end of episode 7, I figured, okay, she lost her kid in the car accident, but she has a mental disorder, and she thought that was her kid. That's what I thought heading in episode 8.
Agreed, and they used that against her. Someone used that against her to do their dirty work. That's what I thought as well.
Exactly right, but we turned out she actually was right, and that was her kid, and he was the one who was behind the scenes as the only conscious one there of the accident. He was the one who makes the switch of the kids, and that's basically where we see the recording at. Marissa picks up the phone, listens to the recording while he's talking to the police, and she's like, I cannot stay married to this messed up person. There's just no chance. There's no way I can let Milo grow up and have this guy be a role model to Milo, aka Noah, whatever. So she is making this decision. She ends up giving him the phone, which I was surprised about. I'm like, wow, she just let him take the phone and discard it of whatever he did. I thought she would immediately tell the police. She did not. Then I figured, okay, how's this going to end? Because there's no way that this ends with him not being either in jail or dead or whatever. It's a bunch of the last 30 minutes of the episode is they have the funeral for Colin, obviously, who, as you mentioned, died immediately in that shot by Carrie. They're at the funeral, and Brian's kind of flying his own wings now. He's like, I'm getting a job. I'm not going to be under your thing anymore. I'm going to do my own thing, which of course is not what Jake Lacy wants to hear. Then you have Gia, who's obviously distraught over Brian. And Jake Lacy keeps making her feel like awful that it's he's like, yeah, I mean, it's had to happen for a reason. I mean, you guys truly shouldn't have been hooking up, which we didn't mention. But yeah. By the way, Yeah. By the way, Gia was hooking up with
Leah with an L.
Leah. My goodness. See, I keep messing up too. Leah is messing around with Colin, who obviously is the friend of Sarah Snook and works with her. So yes, that all that happens, and Jake Lacey keeps making it out to be everyone else's fault and why this happens for a reason. And they get to the funeral, and did we mention the soy at all? Obviously, we did with the soup, but
we did a few times, and I knew it was coming up. I didn't know how it would come up, and it comes up here. We're basically, long story short, because I want to wrap this up here so we can get to some of the fun stuff at the end. Basically, Marissa kills her husband. Marissa kills Peter. She uses the soy against him.
Yep.
It's evident that he has a severe soy allergy. She basically makes sure the EpiPen isn't in the trunk. Nope. So that way she's like, oh yeah, this happens sometimes. Like, he'll be fine. Oh no, where's the EpiPen? And that's
the one she gave him was expired. The one she gave him was expired.
That's it for Peter. And the ambulance was simply too far away, and it was clearly intentional. Yeah. And the show basically wraps up with Michael Pena's character, the lead detective, kind of connecting all the dots, because we get a flashback earlier where earlier in the show he's like, Milo's good with colors. And I thought that was a weird comment, because to me that was an intentional line. I didn't know how it would relate to anything, and it's kind of one of the last things we see of the show where it's a little bit forced, it's a little on the nose, he kind of takes a little bit too long to get to his point. He's like, yeah, that's an interesting thing. I just want you to let you know, like mixing genetic, up your senses, you know?
Yeah, synesthesia.
It's genetic, and I don't know if you know, but Carrie had that too.
She had it.
And he's just kind of looking at Marissa, and that's kind of it. That's kind of the parting shot of the show. So I think it kind of sets us up for season 2. That's what I thought.
Oh, really?
I think if they wanted to, they could. I don't know if it will happen, but I think there's enough on the bone with the characters where the detective, Michael Pena's character, he has a secret of how he got his son in this special institution. He also knows Marissa's big secret of, having the switch son. We have the death of 3 people. More. I meant 3 critical
prominent
people, but
Carrie, Colin, and Jake Lacey. Yeah,
exactly. But then you throw in the dad and the boyfriend, so there's a lot of deaths that you can play up as well. And then you have Jenny's entire character, and that leads us to Mike. So we're gonna go negative first, and then go to the positives. So just we've talked about the whole show. We've kind of laid it all out, but just immediate things that we didn't like and things that we did like. I want to start with what we didn't like, because this is important to me. And this could be rectified with the season 2, but Jenny's character was kind of useless. I mean, it was something interesting at the beginning that she was so connected to Marissa and that she was so involved. And I think Jenny's more integral arc here was that she was kind of a girl boss, which I understood, but it felt like, again, there was more layer to that because she wasn't home a ton. She was focused on her career quite a bit. So if you want to portray that this woman is kind of standing up for herself, maybe make her job a little less dependent on herself. Obviously, she wants to work, but you can't really do the he's a terrible father thing when you're not around yourself all that often. So I thought, I don't know what the point of her was being, and especially they kept showing her job a lot. Yeah. We'd see a lot of her job, and nothing of it seemed to matter. And again, maybe that's rectified in a season 2. That's why the entire time I thought she had to be more involved, because why would he be seeing her so often? That's why she was one of the only people outside of the Irvine clique and then Carrie. So pretty much everyone surrounded Milo directly. She's the only person that we saw on her own. That was it. So I thought surely she has a bigger role in something, and she just didn't.
No, I think that, there is not going to be a season 2, unfortunately. I hate to spoil the...
we know 100%?
Well, it's a miniseries, so it's only 1 season, I believe.
Yeah, I think sometimes they renew that, though. I don't know.
Maybe, but what would there be to... what would be the season 2 plot, essentially?
I think you could do something with, the fallout of Peter's death, and no one... I mean, they know how Peter died.
Right, but here's the thing. At the end of it, you hear Michael Pena say, this case is closed, and he's almost okay with it. The way
right, but that's why I thought there could be a season 2. Because when you say this case is closed, Mike, what is the viewer supposed to think?
The viewer is supposed to think that Michael Pena is okay with an eye for an eye, essentially. In this case, he did something messed up to get his son into an educational school. he's now excusing the behavior of Sarah Snook,
Yes.
who essentially removed Jake Lacey from the life of this kid, who he kind of knows shouldn't be an orphan, should be with Carrie, who's now obviously gone, but probably should not be with. I think he's okay with how everything ended, so he's like, I'm gonna just put this to the
And
side.
also that the case is usually never really closed. That's what I was getting at. That's just kind of a show trope that we see all the time. Like, this is over, and then it's just not over.
Sure, but
usually if you directly say something's over, it's just not.
Right, but who else? Like in the season 2, hypothetically, Colin's gone, Jake Lacey is gone.
I'm not saying I want a season 2. I just think there's enough meat on the bone that if they wanted to go again, they could formulate something. Again, I'm not writing the show. I don't know what the pitch would be. I'm just saying I still think there's enough there, particularly with Marissa and Jenny, those two, that you could do something. And maybe it comes out that someone else was more involved. You can do all these things. It's kind of limitless.
Sure. I mean, it does seem like Jenny is, I mean, she divorced Richie, so maybe that ends that part of the story. It seems like she's just gonna be really good friends with Marissa and watch Jacob and Milo. I mean, that seems like how it ended is that's how it is. But
yeah,
again, if their intention was to make Jenny, they did show a lot of her work as she's this very hardworking, go over the top go getter. I didn't know what that really meant as far as I thought maybe she'd be the one to kind of solve the case, because
I don't think it did. I don't think it meant anything. I think it was supposed to be this symbol for this greater thing, but I don't think it really landed, at least with me.
No, but that's fine. I don't think every single character has to have like, oh, she did this at her job because this has to directly, like, not all of the things had to directly do with Milo. Obviously, Milo was the big. I
just thought it was weird they were showing her so often. That was my thing. I don't think everything had to be related. I think you need some red herrings, but it was a concerned effort to squeeze her in the show quite a bit, and it is because Dakota Fanning's like known, and
that's exactly right.
I think she was one of the more prominent people on this cast as far as name value is concerned. But it just felt like it was kind of shoehorned in and kind of in a way a different show than the rest of the time I was watching it.
That's fair. Again, I don't really mind that, because I think the side characters had a lot of good red herrings and plot lines that did not have to do with Milo, but had to do with their upbringing, or in Colin's case, his gambling addict, that had to be linked with everything else. I would have liked to see, the one thing I didn't like, I think I would have liked to see a little bit more of Esther. I don't think I saw enough of her. I thought all of her scenes were really, really riveting. I thought that, I know that she was linked to the son. That's basically the last time we heard of Esther, was whenever, okay, we needed her to tell us more about this Kyle guy, her son. I
kind of wish she was involved a little bit more too.
I would have liked to see her involved a little bit more. I would have liked to see more of their backstory instead of, oh yeah, I was just her his foster mom, and he seems like a good kid. But we really only used her for the drywall thing. We needed to connect her to where he worked, because there was about 8 or 9 drywall places in the suburbs of Chicago, or in the place they were looking, which is in Chicago. So I would like to see her a little bit more. I think the Dakota Fanning one, she had a prominent role for ultimately someone who did not actually play an active part in the Milo thing. Yes. She was really more of a side character, but Dakota Fanning's so huge that she actually played a bigger role, because I think she was more closely linked to Marissa, as if she was one of the siblings of this family. Like, she was there more than most other people were. So I think they were just kind of setting the storyline of, hey, even though it could be seen as Jenny's fault for hiring this nanny in the first place, even though it really wasn't, because she knew about him before this with the ranch, it kind of just showed that, hey, Marissa and Jenny, despite all that, are still linked together. They're working together to kind of figure out what the heck's going on here. And they both have these kids around the same age. So I thought I was fine. I wasn't really too griped about that, because I was too locked on the other stuff that was going on. And the Jenny work stuff was really the only areas where I kind of looked at my phone. I was like, okay, she's at her work. I don't think this will matter. She's just going to try and land this. I think they were just trying to tell us that she is a hardworking, of the 2 people in the family. Obviously, they just showed us a scene of him scrolling TikTok doomsday. And then during that time, we see her trying to land this big publishing thing. So my thing was, I think they're just going to set the boundary of, this guy is a deadbeat, doesn't do anything but scroll TikTok and lie about Quizzics. She's like the go-getter. I think that was all it was just character development of those 2 characters. This guy.
Oh, 100%. I just think
yeah.
if we get a season 2, they could at least build on that maybe more. And I just wish it was a little bit more relevant, because everything else was. So that's why I was like, I
didn't have many gripes. That's what I'm saying. I
didn't have many gripes either. Here's my biggest one by far, though. And this isn't necessarily a gripe. It's just a way they could have improved on something dramatically. If you wanted the mother's intuition gimmick, here's what you could have done. And I think what they should have done. Let's say Carrie had a burn mark on her arm from when she was a kid. They could have had some distinct mark on Milo that she saw when she gave birth to him. Like, let's say it was a birthmark on the nose, like something weird, something somewhat unique, and then it looks more like Carrie. So not only do you have the birthmark, but it also looks like her, specifically her. So you could have done this with a little girl, whatever, however you want to do it, but it looks like a spitting image of her. So that way, wow, you have the same birthmark. You look just like me, because kids look like other kids. That's just how it goes. Sure. And yes, she's crazy, but it's still a bridge too far. Why wouldn't it just be any other kid? And obviously some part of like mental illness is like hyperfixating on things. I get all of that. I truly do. But I think a better way to do it, and to make it a smidge more realistic and a smidge more engaging, is again like a specific marking or some telltale sign. Like some people have 2 different color eyes, so maybe you do something with that. Like, again, something that just connects these people a little bit more naturally, rather than just her like, wow, hey, this kind of looks like my kid that everyone says is.
Well, so instead of the birthmark, what they did was the synesthesia genetic link.
Yes.
So they said,
yes,
he's looking at all of Milo's paintings. He's then asking Carrie Finch's old teacher why she got in trouble so much, and she kept telling her, well, she kept thinking words meant colors.
But Mike, I'm talking about how Carrie would know, not necessarily other people.
Well, no. The way Carrie knew was because she said that he has a lot of the same attributes as her. So when she first met him at the ranch, they were talking about things, and she was like, yeah, we think alike here. We think I thought she was a little quick to associate that, but I think she was just trying to make a general
that's connection. What I meant. It felt forced. That's right. Exactly what I meant. But
clearly, the more time she spent around Milo as the nanny of the other kid, I think she just assumed that, hey, if I have this this kind of synesthesia, way of talking or way of thinking, and maybe I could see similar qualities. Again, I thought the whole time it was just kind of a mental disorder of she's not really. She has good intentions, but I think she just is so hyperfixated on wanting a kid that she's maybe making a little bit of stuff up. Maybe a little bit of stuff she's making up in her head. Ultimately, what it was though is she had this genetic thing with Milo where they kind of both. I don't know how the Michael Pena's character was able to. I think he was able to figure it out because he has a kid that also has some disorders. I think he was able to kind of link that. Hey, I know, having spent time around kids with disabilities, that the coloring things, all of those things, those drawings ended up being important, because of the detective that was the lead detective on this case here. So I think that I liked all that. I mean, the birthmark would have been interesting too, but I think they wanted to spend more time on the disability portion of how they could link things up to each other, which I didn't mind either.
Yeah, I just wanted a more direct link. I think you could have actually done both. I think you could have immediately thought that, and then you spend time with them, and then you discover. I think there was a way to do both and layer it even that much deeper and make it more believable for us as the audience on why she was fixated on this child specifically. Yeah. So again, it's a little bit of a nitpick, but it just bothered me a little bit. And then episode 7, I just thought kind of sucked. As far as some logic was concerned, I just didn't like the killing of the boyfriend. I thought that was a little bit ridiculous. I thought the bookie dad, I laughed at the scene of him. He like beat up a guy for money, and he came in and he like chucked a bloody paper towel in the middle of his console. Yeah. I thought that was a little, it was funny, but I was like, okay, we get it. Episode 7, and I texted you this, and I believe you agree with me. Outside of a thing here or there, most of episode 7, we had all the information to. We didn't necessarily need to see it. We were told all these things. So I understand like the showing and telling of the episode, but we knew most of this, and we could infer most of this as well. I thought if they wanted to do something like this, it could have been in an episode, like 10, 15 minutes in an episode, and we just go boom, 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 and we go through it. I didn't like that it was an entire episode, especially the one leading up to the finale. I thought it was just a lot of wasted time.
Well, here's the thing, and I had recently watched Paradise, and their last episode was also a majority flashback episode. But I think with this one, some of the scenes we did have to see, because we had to figure out why her and Kyle, we had to get their background, their backstory. So of course I knew we were going to go 6 years in the.
We had to know why they were connected.
Of course, and of course we had to know why this car accident had any information, had any importance at all. So we know that she obviously had a kid the exact same time that Sarah Snook had a kid. So we figured that out in the flashback, which we did not know. We also figured out that her and Kyle were the one that had. So obviously there's a connection there. We also know that her
Right.
dad was again. We know we were able to link all this stuff. I don't think we needed as many scenes with her and her dad with that, but her and her mom's
Yes.
scenes I thought were pretty important because it was okay. They was kind of building that her mom is a terrible mom.
Agreed.
They don't treat each other very well. So that was interesting. It made you feel a little bit bad for Carrie. Obviously, you still don't excuse kidnapping anyone. But at the end of episode 7, you get to where Milo was going on this, because I wanted to see. I know that we already knew that he was with them the whole week. We saw him and Kyle in the car. We saw him and Carrie in that room. But we were able to kind of see their, the ransom call. We see that happen in their point of view. We see them on the loose. They go to the motel, who obviously we knew he died at the motel. So we were kind of retelling the story from a different point of view, which I don't mind. I mean, it's again, flashbacks of we already knew this, but it's getting it from a different lens. So obviously we didn't know who came in the room and killed Ron Murphy. In this case, it was obviously Jake Lacey, but we got it from a different lens. So I didn't mind all that. Maybe a couple scenes too many. But I thought ultimately it led to the infamous car crash, which I had no idea was coming. As I mentioned before, I was like, wait a second.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Obviously she goes in once she realized Milo's been taken. She goes into the ocean, and I was like, well, she's not gonna obviously take her own life here. She's obviously we know she's in the next episode because she goes to the house. So she was going into this ocean almost like she's remembering things again, and it takes you back to the night at the hospital. Where as we retell it, because in the beginning of the episode, the flashback episode, they say, sorry, your kid didn't make it. And I just figured that she had died in childbirth or whatever, or something like that. And her mom was there to kind of pick her up. Then at the end of episode 7, we get this actual, I'm like, is this really the way it's being retold? And it was the car accident, obviously. And she's got blood. Everything's happening. I'm like, wait a second, what's going on here? Is it not a childbirth incident? Is it?
Yeah, I wasn't expecting the swap. I assumed the baby died and maybe she had a vendetta against, I don't know. I didn't know what I was thinking at this
I totally agree. That's what I thought at first. I thought that her kid died and the other kid who lived, she was like, that really deserves to be my kid. Yes. So I thought Milo was her obsession because it's like, wait, I was supposed to have this kid, not you guys. It was taken from me. So that's what I thought. Ultimately, we find out that the kids were swapped, and that was like I said, the ultimate plot twist of the year. Outside of a couple other, I mean, that's actually probably the biggest plot twist I've seen this year. Of shows.
100%. I don't think it's really close, and I think that's what the show did really well. Because just to transition to like what it did well, because the thumbnail for this video will be show of the year ? And
sure.
We'll tap into that at the very end. But I thought what the show did well. I thought the pacing for the most part was really good. I think it maybe came out a smidge too hot because it was so bam, bam, bam.
We went right into it. Yeah.
Yeah. Usually you don't want to, if you go at that pace immediately, you either want to keep the pace or you want to drop it to a level that you slowly ramp it back up. I thought it was really up and down and up and down, and that worked until I'd say around like episode 5 and 6. Then it started to be like, okay, maybe this scene's a little too long, maybe this storyline's a little bit too dragged out. But I thought for the most part, the pacing, it was kind of unique. You don't see that often. You don't see the highs and then you dip a little bit and then go right back to the high. You dip a little bit, go right back to the high. Usually it's more of a slow burn. Yeah. So I liked the pacing. It was unique in that sense. I liked Sarah Snook's performance. I thought she was unbelievable.
Acting,
if she wins an award for this show, I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever.
Yeah.
I also thought, even though she wasn't super relevant in a way in the show, I thought Dakota Fanning did her character really well. Yeah. I thought like she was really believable. And then Michael Pena, who feels like he's always playing a detective or something of that sort. I thought he was really special in the show as well. I thought he had some really good moments. So I liked the performances. I liked the pacing. I thought the story was engaging throughout. I wanted to know what happened. There was never a point where I was like, I know exactly what happened, which is good because as I said off the top, usually these shows you can kind of sniff out what's going on. This one, I was wrong. I was blatantly wrong. And I had multiple whiffs at trying to be right, and I just never had it. I never had it. And I guess if you're taking notes the entire time and you're rereading them throughout, maybe, just maybe you can come to some sort of similar conclusion. But even then, I don't think you're ever just sniffing out exactly what happened. So I think that's impressive, especially nowadays with the amount of media we consume on a year-to-year basis. It feels like we see a lot of the same-ish stories told a lot. This, obviously, it's a trope as old as time. It's a whodunit, right? That's like the original story. But they did it in such an engaging way. And then the other thing I wanted to harp on, Mike, was I thought the entire community being connected. I didn't think it was forced. I think oftentimes in these shows it can get a little bit ridiculous, but it all kind of makes sense. It all kind of makes sense for all these people's characters. The fact that Colin was a gambling addict, like, okay, that kind of makes sense because if you listen to his character, like he is with Leah, who is another addict who we talked to. So
Yeah,
obviously, it makes sense if he had some baggage as well. That's just kind of,
of course.
not to be cliche, but that's just kind of playing the averages there. And then we have Peter kind of dictating all these terrible events so that way we can kind of understand why you do something so ridiculous. Because if Peter didn't have all these skeletons in the closet, so to say, it would be a really tough logic jump to make for him to switch babies. It would just be really tough for us to buy. But because of all the stuff that he did throughout his life in this show, it made sense. And then Carrie, again, I had a little bit of a problem with how she's figuring out how Milo was the son, but I thought they did it. Okay, let's say I thought they did a 6 or 7 out of 10. That means they still did it at a better average than what they could have done, which to me would have been just seeing him in public and being like, oh my God, that's my son, or something stupid like that. Like, I think a lot of shows would have done that route and they didn't. So at least they tried to build upon that. They had this uber specific type of disability, if you will, or complication, however you want to phrase it. So I liked that element as well. I thought everything was just tied in, and like how they had this kind of loveless marriage in a way, and how that was weighing on them, and part of it was because of Peter. Like there's so much to dissect, and we've done it, but I think this might be show of the year. And I said I'd save it, but I just want to make that declaration now. I think right now, 8 episodes of everything I've seen this year, there's some contenders. I think this was the best show of the year. I thought it was a great execution of this kind of idea.
Yeah, I want to go back to your point about the acting. I thought Sarah Snook did an outstanding job. I thought Jake Lacey once again playing, kind of the prick of the show.
He's a great prick. He might be really an actual prick because he's too good at playing. He's the prick.
Too good at this stuff right now, and he did a great job. I thought Michael Pena was one of the stars of the show as well. Dakota Fanning, once again, great job by her. So yeah, I think that obviously I love the storyline, but I think the actors made it really, really good. I really do. I think they elevated the storyline as well. The foreshadowing I mentioned earlier, I think was really good. It was subtle, but it was there. It obviously played a part. Outside of the, Jenny's storyline didn't really matter, but there wasn't any massive foreshadowing of this, the scar and the soy. It was so subtly in there of Sarah Snook's scar. It's like, okay, what did that have to do with something? It probably is going to be told eventually. The soy, obviously, they hinted at it a couple times. We know that's obviously the downfall of Peter. Again, I think the way they did the car crash thing was very, very interesting. They kind of set it up. They ramped it up as this kind of big reveal. And then not only the car crash, but the kid swapping, I thought was really well done as well. And again, I mentioned it earlier. I thought all the episodes really had a meaning. I know that episode 7, the flashback episode, maybe wasn't your cup of tea, but there had to be a flashback episode.
I'm just an anti-flashback episode guy. I think you can do it for parts of an episode. I think you can,
which they did early
maybe do it throughout, and they did, yeah, for sure. I just don't like when one entire, I believe these were 50-minute episodes, one entire 50-minute episode dedicated to everything that you've kind of told us throughout.
Yeah, the only thing I knew that was going to happen was because the entire first 6 episodes, they kept saying, They were trying to make us think Carrie was this terrible person, but every time that someone talked about Carrie, they were like, oh, no, she's great things. Jenny was like, no, she seemed very normal. Obviously, Milo was there, and Milo was like, yeah, no, she was pretty cool. So I knew that she wasn't actually the bad guy in the show, if you will.
No, I came to the same conclusion.
Even though she took the kid, and obviously you can't kidnap a kid, I think they were leading us to believe that there was some kind of reason why she had the kid. And there was some kind of reason as why she wanted the kid so much. And I was thinking there was going to be some sort of relation, which of course there was. I think it's the best show I've watched all year. And I've watched obviously White Lotus, Presumed Innocent. I've watched Paradise, which I loved. I watched We Were Liars. I watched Your Friends and Neighbors, Silo, Behind Her Eyes. And then obviously All Her Fault, I think was the best of the bunch there.
Severance, I'll toss in there. I've watched,
you watched I did not watch Severance, but you watched it.
Yeah, I've watched most of everything you just said. I think it really went for it, and that's what I appreciated. I think some of these shows maybe tame back a little bit sometimes, and we talk about this all the time, just off air. A lot of these shows are always an episode or two long, and it
Yeah.
always drags. Presumed Innocent was a really good show.
Yeah.
They could have made it more engaging with those last few episodes, but it was just done. It lost its steam. It was a good
Right.
show, but it just went too long to get to a conclusion we all could have assumed.
Yeah.
So when you have a show like this, a whodunit particularly, as soon as you find out who did it, in a way, the show's done at that point, unless you can kind of capture something and keep going with it.
Yeah.
We didn't know who did it really until the beginning of the last episode. And they did a great job kind of unveiling all of that. It wasn't something you could just predict. You could think Peter had a role for sure. I'm not discounting that. But you couldn't articulate to me why. You could just say, oh, it has to be a parent. Oh, like he's shady. Like you can do all those tropes, but you couldn't actually lay out a reasonable case on why he did it. Like if you were the most like experienced TV watcher, there was enough clues where you could have said it, but it was just so well done that I thought it was impressive on how they were able to kind of captivate us the entire time.
Yeah, I watched a show earlier this summer called We Were Liars, and it's a one season similar to this. I think it's 8 episodes where they do a flashback every single. It's 1 year ago today. Then every single 8 episodes is they're going back and forth between real time and a year ago. And I wasn't able to clue in the differences in what happened between the years, but book readers were able to do that. I thought even if you were an avid book reader, which there is a book about this, All Her Fault, even if you were a book reader and you were watching the show, I don't think you would have been able to clock that he switched.
Mike, I read books all the time. I mean, maybe if you read this book, but no, I'm a pretty big reader, and no, I usually, like I said, I'm on with these things, and if I'm wrong, usually it has to do with like it's my fault. I overanalyze something or I just missed something blatant. Yeah. This time there was nothing. I don't know how I could have watched this differently and came to the right conclusion. So.
No, and that's why I think they did a really good job of, we weren't able, they were keeping us on our toes, and they were able to, I think they made the big reveal. They executed it pretty well. I think they executed it really well, actually.
Any final thoughts on All Her Fault?
What a show, man! What a show. Sarah Snook, I gotta give her flowers because my first hint was wrong. I thought Sarah Snook had something to do with it. I really did. I thought she was just kind of like the paranoid mother who actually didn't remember that she was the one who kind of did all this. That was my initial thought. I thought Sarah Snook, she's behind it. I hope I'm wrong, but I was like, I think she's behind it, and she just forgot how it happens because I'm so used to shows where the main character is the actual unreliable narrator, and they are actually the one at fault, and it all circles back to them. So this did not happen like that at all. I just thought it was really, really well done. I think a lot of the people did a really good job. And I love the ending of Michael Pena sitting next to Sarah Snook and kind of being like, hey, I let my kid in and I did something. He didn't explicitly tell her that, but we see obviously in episode 4 where he does the thing with the Tylenol and he actually gets his son into St. Mark's Academy. And I think he's able to kind of make the connection of, hey, we would do anything for our kids. That was another one of the great scenes in episode 3 or episode 4, where he goes to her house and talks to her about that. And obviously it goes full circle at the very end where, you do everything for your kids, even if, and he obviously makes the mention as well as I think even good people can do bad things if they're pushed. He makes that sentiment in episode 2, I believe. So I think he had a lot of really good lines. I think the show in general was one that I'm gonna have to rewatch. I'm gonna have to rewatch it because it's a couple of the other shows that I had on here. I've went back and rewatched, I think 1 or 2 of them. This one would be one that I would probably want to rewatch again. I think it was really good.
And I'm sure there's stuff we missed too. Even dissecting it, even consuming stuff about it. I'm sure there's stuff that people are missing that are kind of subtle in there. That's the kind of show that this was. I'm just looking forward to.
And by the way, great dialogue in the show. I think that sometimes the dialogue can seem not real. Like if you have two actors in a room and they're portraying, say in this case, husband and wife with Jake Lacey's character and Sarah Snook's character. I think all the discourse, all the dialogue felt real and authentic. I think Sarah Snook did a great job of portraying a mother who just lost her 5-year-old child for a week.
I'm just excited for the next time we can do this because right now, I mean, television has kind of taken a step back. There's some streaming shows that we could check out. I've heard that this end of year push here, there's going to be some stuff. There's a show on Netflix right now that I'm misremembering the name of, but I've heard people talk about that. So these will arise as they come up. Prestige TV is kind of in a shaky place right now, but hopefully we'll be able to do more of these. All Her Fault was a great starting point. And again, as I mentioned off the top, we'll have more gimmicks of this nature. So be sure to check that out. Maybe in the future, these will be more formatted into specific categories, but we just wanted to kind of word dump on you guys about the show, which we enjoy doing. And if you're into more episodic television, yesterday we did our Survivor pod, so make sure to check that out. That season's finally heating up a bit, and we'll have Traders in a few months here, and then Big Brother. So we have a lot on the television front. So if you're looking forward to any kind of pop culture media stuff, this is the place for you. So make sure to like, comment, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. We'll be back either tomorrow or early next week. We're still kind of figuring that out with a mailbag, a sports mailbag. There might be some media stuff sprinkled in there as well. So be sure to look that for that coming forward here. And then we have Survivor, obviously, every Wednesday. We got that up yesterday. So yeah, make sure to check all the Gurus content out. That is Mike Testa. I am Xavier Aguiar, and we will see you next time.